Hi, I'm Alyssa Garcia. Today I'm going to be talking to you all about women's rights. I'm just going to be informing you all on current challenges that women face today, including discrimination in the workforce against women, women of color, and just kind of, giving you some background information as well. I'm going to go over history involving women's rights. I'm going to go over the women's suffrage movement, and then I'm going to touch base on what's actually happening today. So we can start off with a quote by a famous actress named Emma Watson. She actually quotes that the reality is that if we do nothing, it will take 75 years or more, or for me to be 100 years old before we even can expect change to see equal pay with women and men. I believe she was 20 years old when she said this quote. So that's 80 years for her to be 100, and for a woman to expect the same pay as men. So that's a huge, huge gap, a huge age gap. Let's take a look at the history with women's rights. We can start off with Susan B. Anthony. She was a women's rights activist. She lived from 1820 to 1906. She was one of the most visible leaders with the women's suffrage movement. This movement primarily or initially began with women wanting the right to vote, but it also included education reform for women, as well as some divorce reformation, I believe. Women were very limited on what they were educated about and what they could do within their marriages and with divorcing men at the time. So they really wanted, initially, the right to vote. Equal pay came in as well. They started working around this time, working in the factories, the fields, and started working the same jobs as men. However, they were getting paid less than men. So they really wanted, women back then really wanted to band together to create change. And it started happening in different states with initially voting. It began, this is just a little clip that I got from the internet. It began in 1869, Wyoming. They granted the right for women to vote in their state. So state by state kind of they started to allow women to vote, but it fully didn't get around to all 50 states, I believe, until 1920, and that's when Congress actually ratified the amendment. I believe it was the 19th Amendment, and granted all women the right to vote, but little by little states were allowing women to vote. But still, from 1920 to 1963, when the women's rights suffrage began, still a huge gap. You know what I mean? What is that, 40, 30 something years, 50, I don't know, to 1920. It's a huge gap. So it still took some time for women to even gain the right to vote. I don't know where that slide is blank. All right, so now getting down to the real issue that I want to be talking about. This clip right here shows, it's just a little cartoon, and it shows, and this is the first 77 cents I've ever earned. It's supposed to be just kind of like a funny clip because it's it's like kind of half a dollar or whatever, but this is the true reality of it. Women only earn 77 cents. As of today, we earn about 79 cents. I believe it rounds up to 80 point something, but half a cent, But this is the first 77 cents I've ever earned. This just kind of shows that women, it's such a big issue that there are cartoons made about it, but I don't think people take it, women actually see this issue as big as it is. You go to work, you work for your pay, but little do you know the reality is that you don't get paid as much as a male co-worker sitting next to you gets paid. You probably gets paid something more. If it's not a whole bunch more, it's more. Just not based on degrees, not based on education, just based on the fact that he's a male worker. So yeah, this is kind of just a picture to show that. And then oh wow, this is so messed up. Okay, so if we look at the timeline, in 1963, women working full-time year-round made 59 cents on average for every dollar earned by a man. So in 1963, when this act began, they earned 59 cents. We go on to 2010, women earned 77 cents to men's dollar. So this does mean that the wage gap has narrowed by less than half a cent per year. So what's half a cent? That's nothing per year. So every single year, half a cent earned is the difference. It doesn't make any sense, not to me, but that's just, it's just crazy to think about it like that. And here we are in 2019, women earn 79 cents for every dollar earned by men. So if we go from 2010 to 2019, that's only a 2-cent difference earned in these, 9 years coming on today. And this graph just kind of shows, I don't know if y'all can see it very well, but it kind of goes by race too. American Indian, I think Black or African. So this is basically the uncontrolled, meaning it doesn't matter what education, it doesn't matter what kind of background degree you come from. This is just the percent from different races that you get paid. You can't really see it, that kind of sucks, but you can see it's very, very low from the controlled. This is just what women get paid, and I don't think it got the men's one up here, but it's still very low. And then here we are moving on to race. So women of color face even wider gaps in opportunity. So not only does it affect the wage, it affects opportunity as well. Women of color aren't usually chosen for much more professional jobs. It doesn't matter if you got a degree, usually as well. In some cases, it's given to white women, women of American descent. It's really crazy, but this is still a problem today. Although it may not seem like one, it's a huge problem we face. Asian women have the hardest time of all women, actually, as of today. When it comes to climbing the career ladder, 72% of Asian women just remain individual contributors. So they remain working for someone. They remain at the same level that they are. They don't ever go up. They just kind of stay the same. So that's 72% of all Asian women working in America. And it's going to take about 208 years for us to truly get gender equality in the pay rate in America. So 208 years from now, I'll be gone. I know most of you guys will be gone as well. But that's how long it's going to take for us to truly obtain the equality and the pay rates for both men and women, regardless color, regardless race. It's going to take a long time. And then what women's rights activists look like today. So we have, there's, I can't even tell you how many groups of women's societies and on campuses of feminists today, and the feminist groups. We have the marches. I know we have the Women's March as well, 2018. They march for equal pay. They march for abortion rights. They march for, sex trafficking, a whole lot of issues revolving, involving women's rights, and just kind of still fighting that battle from the 1960s, the 1860s, the 1920s, when we gained the Equal Pay Act, but it still didn't make any difference. So we're just still constantly fighting that fight to just attain the equality that we should have as women that men have. So I think that's really it. I don't know if I went kind of fast, but this is all we got. But yeah, thank you guys. This is just about women's rights and wages.